Namaste. So, as we decided, first session will be English, second session in Hindi. Some of the key ideas which has gone into the blossoming of Indian civilization, its culture, as we were saying yesterday. One is that the one became the many, and this existence, as we see around, is a manifestation of the divine, but not a complete manifestation. It's still in the process. So there is this stream of evolutionary thought already inbuilt within Indian thought, that it's a progressive manifestation, step by step. And what we call as evolution is nothing else but the manifestation of the divinity which is there in creation as an essence, meaning thereby that we are essentially divine. Man carries within himself fundamentally a divine nature, and this essence of divinity is in everything and everybody, even the grain of sand in matter, the lump of clay, the clod, everywhere, the worm, the plant, there is this essence of divinity. But in man, something else takes place, and that is that man can become aware of this divinity. He can consciously participate in the evolution. So that is where man's special role comes in. That up till man, during the course of evolution, this divinity that is buried inside keeps throwing out symbol figures and shapes in the form of these countless creatures and forms and figures. But in man, there is the possibility of completing this whole evolutionary journey. So, just to take an example, what it means is we are in the mountains. So, we can look at the mountains. A mountain, of course, a beautiful place. But if we feel what is the effect of mountain on all of us, it has a healing property. Very spontaneously, it has a healing property. There is a purity of air. There is the feeling of something mighty, strong, intensely meditating. That's the impression one can have. Mountains symbolize tapasya. So, if we look at a mountain symbolically, even look at the shapes how they have formed. They start from below and they climb towards a kind of peak. So, it symbolizes the aspiration of earth climbing towards the sky. So, that's how the Sanatan Dharma thought will look at it. So, in mountain, the thought of God, which is about the aspiration that climbs from earth to the sky, is embedded. Again, in the river, what is a river? It's symbol of life, always flowing, always changing. And yet, at its base, it's the same base over which it is flowing. It's ever changing, yet it is the same. And that's how the Buddhist thought looks at life, ever changing, yet ever the same. Like habit, it's flowing in a same pattern. Similarly, when we look at all these various phenomena in nature, what is a worm, for example? What is a worm? This little creature. So, an Indian thought will look at a worm as a butterfly in the making. He'll not look at a worm, oh, this is a worm, to be disdained. Because this evolutionary idea is inbuilt within it. So, everywhere in this universe, when we look at it, it is the original Veda, the scripture. By Veda means the knowledge which is inside creation, the ultimate knowledge. Veda literally comes from the root Vid. It's the ultimate knowledge. And this ultimate knowledge is embedded in creation, just as in computer you have it's already fed inside the software according to which the computer behaves. So there is this knowledge embedded in creation as the consciousness force, and slowly over a period of time it's disclosing itself. It discloses itself in the mountain, but also it discloses itself in the gentlest of buds. It discloses itself in the spring, it discloses itself in the winters. Look at the way the seasons are arranged. So, it is also, we often, we have these books about how to, the four stages of life. So, we have the four seasons. In India, of course, you see 6 seasons. But look at it. Seasons are telling us what is to be done, what life is about. Because the same divine truth is there in everything. It is a book. Creation is a book which we need to read. But if we read it only on the surface, we won't understand it. When we go into the depths, it's the same knowledge expressing itself through symbol figures. So the first season normally is spring. It's not about 1st January, but that's how it is celebrated, spring season. In many cultures, in India, after Lori, some people after Baisakhi, different. So spring is the first season. So what is spring? Spring is about the exuberance of birth and youth. So that's the first season. It should be filled with colors, joy, hope. And then the next season, next comes summer. Youth is okay. Now get on to labor. So summer is all about labor, sweat, bearing the heat of the sun. It's a kind of tapasya we engage in, but of a different kind. And then comes rain. Rain soothes and purifies. So next stage is, okay, we have lived these two stages. Now we need to go through a cleansing process. So you see, 25 years, 50 years, 50 onwards. Na sachue khake. But in a different way. Now, everybody has gone through experiences of life. Now you need to take stocks, make sense of it, go through what is essential, you keep that. Whatever is not essential, you let it be washed away. So rains do that work. So that is the third season of life. And the fourth is autumn or winter. What happens? Now we are preparing for the next spring. So look at what happens to a tree. It sheds all that is unnecessary. All the, leaves are shed. And the tree goes into a state of inner concentration. So in this inner concentration, it gathers strength for coming back into the future. So when we enter into the 75th year, this is a way of saying 75th year. Well, let me say 150th year. So we take it that now is the next becoming. So to gather strength, to gather energies, concentrate, and let many of these attachments, the key which you don't want to hand over to the Bahu, just give it to her. Just, this is not the time to keep on in the mind, this is my bank balance, this thing. Give it. And just this is the time to start a journey afresh. So in the cycles of nature, you will see rebirth. Rebirth is something which is all the time happening. So it is something very beautiful. In day and night, see, the Gita describes day and night also. So we all have noticed in the daytime, all the forces are in exuberance which give us hope, joy, energy, enthusiasm. Everybody in the day is really good morning. Seldom you hear. That's why I have abandoned the idea of saying good night. So always good morning. Night also, there is morning only. Morning is going to come, or you can take it like, it is morning which is continuing. Night is a time when most people are attacked by all kinds of forces which are very dark. That's why you see night, people tend to get these dark thoughts. Many people fall sick, people die, often they get heart attacks, all, during that late phases of the night. So day and night also they saw a correspondence. Early morning and late evening they saw a correspondence. When nature is still. And they spoke about it in such fantastic ways. For instance, they allocated certain times, like especially in the morning and the evening. So it was Prabhat Vela, you sit and meditate. And then Sandhya time, you do Sandhya Vandan. Now, it was not like an enjoinder that you have to do it that way. But now there was a story connected with it, that during this evening time, see how it is intertwined through countless stories, some rituals, some truths, occult truths. So, as a child, I had heard this story that during evening, Godhuli Vela, you should not, engage in any activities which are not meant to be good. Why? Because Shiva is taking a round of the universe. Now, who is Shiva? Shiva quietens everything. He is transbound. So, in the evening, you can actually feel a very natural state of trance which is developing in creation. Everything is quiet. Birds are returning back. Everybody is returning back. So, they also discovered in this, in the change of timings as the day progressed, Prahar, the play of forces, and connected it. And even in the story of Ravana, you see very interestingly, Ravana's mother, Kaikashi, And father, Kakasi is a Rakshasi or a Asuri, Asur Kanya. And his Ravana's father, Pulast, he is a Brahmin coming from the higher, he is Brahma's grandson. Now, see, during those days, what kind of connections took place? Even Ruru and Pramadvara, we see a similar kind of combination. So, they both, particularly Kakasi, she says, I want a child. So Pulas Rishi at that point of time, he says, look here, this is evening time. This is not a good time to really conceive. And well, he eventually gives in, but he says, it's something we have done, it's not going to be very good for the child. And you have, but she was very ambitious. He wanted that my child should become the greatest Asur king. And see, it through a story, the state of conception of a mother, the time when you are conceiving, all these things were inbuilt. It is such a detailed scientific understanding of life, not science as we understand today, which is no science but a science of appearances. So when people try to, say that it is scientific and bring out some evidence from the materialistic Western science, it is to reduce the science of Sanatan Dharma by many, many, many notches below. The science that is elaborated in the Vedic lore is far, far deep, far, far profound. For instance, just to take an example, there are 6 schools of Indian philosophy which have all sprung from the Vedas. They all say that ultimate aim is liberation. So they have sprung from the Vedas. Look at these schools. Sankhya, as the word goes, Sankhya. Count, it's about numbers. But how does it start the number? There are 24, or some would say 25, some would say 23, depending on how you count, principal elements that constitute creation. So you have these Panchindriya, you have these Panchabhut which we spoke about, you have the one Purusha, you have Ahankar, you have, if you really go through that, the Buddhi, Mahat, it is something so fantastic that they analyze this entire creation into certain fundamental principles. The Trigunas, the threefold Prakriti, and you could understand anything anywhere based on that. Just to take an example, normally we analyze things and try to understand and try to reach a conclusion about whether it's good or bad or healthy or not. Now it is all organic and all these things. But how did they arrive at that conclusion? They said there are 3 principal forces of nature which are operating all over in creation. So what were the 3 forces? Tamasic, Rajasic and Satwik. So based on that, you can just figure out anything in the world. For example, Tamasic food is not good for health. So what is Tamasic food? Rotten, stale, kept in the fridge. There were no fridges, but something which has been kept for a long time. So perhaps that's why in India we never had a fridge. We had that nice system where, one day food can last. Those stores and, So this idea of storing food in fridge and then eating after a few days, now we have got used to it, but it was considered as tamasic food. They didn't have to see that whether they are bacteria or not. You eat a stale food, it is bound to, affect you. So this was all tamasic. But tamas is not only in food. Tamas is also in the mind. Tamas is a lazy mind saying, it's a stale mind. What is a stale mind? I have my own stock ideas, opinions. My grandfather used to say it. I know it all, I don't need to move. So Tamasic man lives by stock ideas, opinions, and is not willing to challenge them, not willing to question them, not willing even to understand them, and he is very content with that. He is refusing to progress, refusing to understand anything new. Tamasic life is a mechanical life. Every day morning the person gets, like Kolu ka bell, Mulla ki daud masjid tak. So he's just, going from here to there, running about, and it's a life which is like a drudgery that he's leading. He may be doing, apparently, living in an ashram, but he is still living like a tamasic human being. There is also tamasic dan. You give a gift, tamasic dan is where you are giving a gift without any consideration. Are dena hai, you give, okay, which school you have to, or which orphanage you have to distribute blankets, go and distribute so many blankets, write it that so many given in his name. Feed the poor, tamasic dan, without any thought. Just imagine when all this, we have further imbibed this spirit coming from the West, and I feed the poor. Now, what happens is when you feed the poor, so one day you take very nice food, halwa, puri, nice things. Now, once a week, you are feeling your conscience is satisfied that I stole many people, but I am feeding the poor. So I am doing a good deed. What happens to the poor? Now, the next 6 days, they are having a tough time because they are looking for that seventh day when you have the special food. This all of us have gone through. I mean, FMC, wonderful place, but I remember on Tuesdays there used to be special lunch. So other days we were just skipping through. Or Tuesday ko abhi lunch aane wala hai. Air Force messes. One day chola bhatura. So we are looking for that day when chola bhatura will be made. So other days we could not enjoy so much because we are waiting for that day when there will be chola bhaturas. So this is Tamasic way of doing things, where there is no thought, there is no feeling, there is no real consideration, but things are done, just mechanically. Because why we are doing it? My parents used to do it. Why the parents were doing it? Don't question. My parents were doing it. Why your parents were doing it? Don't ask too many questions. Their parents were doing it. This is a Tamasic way of life. And when India started living this kind of life, it fell. One of the reasons for its fall. And Sri Aurobindo describes these even Tamasic kind of societies. So he says there are three types of societies: the Tamasic, the Rajasic, and the Satwik. So Tamasic society, he says, is India of today. And he says it moves on bullock carts. So slowly it is going. By today, of course, I am saying 100 years back. Since then, there is intense rajas and awakening of sattva in India, thanks to Sri Aurobindo's yoga for India. He not only did yoga for the world, but also yoga for India, but that's a different subject. We'll probably touch upon it. So he says it's like bullock cart, moving at a slow pace, safe, because bullock carts will hardly meet with an accident, but it'll hardly take you to long distances. And it's not a very comfortable thing, though it's very idyllic thing. So in a village, it's nice to once in a while, feel the bullock cart, and you watch a movie Lagan and you feel, oh, so nice, bullock carts. Ever traveled in it? You realize if you travel 2 kilometers, what happens to you? So it's not a very comfortable feeling, but it's okay when there are only bullock carts. Then there is rajas. So tamas, to shake tamas. Now look at the logical way nature is acting. Initially, tamas makes everything settle down. So we spoke about Sachidanand and one existence becoming all these many existences. So where did tamas come from? Tamas comes from that stability. It is inertia, the principle of inertia. Again, existence must be stable. So we have the principle of tamas. It's the principle of inertia in creation. We didn't say Newton's first law of motion. We just said that there is tamas and universalized it. So what is the second law of creation? Rajas. Rajas must come to shake tamas. Otherwise creation will not move. Intense life, full of activity, full of vigor, but lacking in direction. So Rajasic action is like that. Doing for the joy of doing, for the sake of doing. But for what purpose? अरे मजा आ रहा है, अच्छा लग रहा है. I'm enjoying it. So this is how Rajas comes in. So Rajas is also in all the foods which are tikhalal and all that, mirch, masala, many types of meat, all this is Rajas. It makes the being, it literally makes you sweat and it energizes you in certain ways. So Rajasic food. So Rajasic food gives you a lot of different kinds of energy. Meat, for instance, Rajasic food. So when you eat it, you are ready for fighting. There are even activities which are proper to the Rajasic kind of humanity. Business, war, they are typically Rajasic kind of humanity. Mechanical work, a Tamasic kind of humanity which spares itself thought. Rajasic thought, it will jump from one book to another. It will say, Arey, 2 days back I had read this and is very much taken up by that opinion, fantastic. Then after 3 days picks up something new. He said, no, this is fantastic. Then very soon it wears off. So it wants another something new. So it keeps flirting with thought. And in the end it says, कोई फायदा नहीं होता है किसी चीज का. Quite naturally. You never really tried anything. You were flirting with thought. So a lot of people flirt with thought. They pick up a lot of books here, there, everything. At the end, you're neither here nor there, but you have this sense that you have moved on journey. So Sri Aurobindo says modern European society is like Rajo Guna built. So Rajo Guna built society it moves at great speed. It looks like so many things are happening. But it says it invariably has no direction and purpose, so it tends to crash sooner or later. So there are again Rajasic activity, Rajasic Dan. When you do it with this idea of pride, I am giving. So you will see people who donate some money and they want their plaques to be put in the name of someone. श्रीमती इनके लेट श्रीमती इनके नाम से एक पत्थर लगवा दिया. When mother was offered some money for Golkund, and she was said, all that they want is that the name should be mentioned on one of the stones. So the mother said, okay, we'll keep it on the floor. This was her way of saying, we'll keep it on the floor. Are you ready? And sometimes so absurd, you have spoiled the whole beauty. There's a nice little bench in the park, and behind you says Srimati so and so unke naam se. Now you're figuring out who this person is. Nobody seems to know who this person is. So this is a Rajasic way of doing things, where you are doing things for getting all these external acclaim, egoistic ambition, and what it brings in return. Tamasic gifts bring delusion to the giver and the receiver. And Rajasic gifts bring pleasure and pain. Instant pleasure followed by pain. When you are giving initially, the person is very happy receiving it. You are also very happy. You are the giver. After some times, as I was saying yesterday, you start reducing, then there is pain. Both sides there is pain. So this is the way Rajasic life moves. Plenty of ramifications. I am just cutting it on. Then there is Sattva. Sattva is balance, harmony, equilibrium. Now, don't we see it in atom itself? You have that state of inertia, neutrons who either are not on this side nor on that side. Then you have, electron, proton, neutron. You have those balancing equilibrium. Even atom seeks equilibrium. There is intense movement. There is the state where there would be stability, force of inertia, force of movement, and the force of equilibrium. So in entire creation they are operating. So Sattva is about balance and equilibrium. Sattvic foods are fruits. Anything which is fresh, vegetables, kand, mool, they are all nice Sattvic food. So you don't have to think about organics. Sattvic food is there. But see how we are carried away now, organic brands and all over we are going into. So, how about branding some Sattvic food? Nice Sattvic food we can do. And it can be very, even organic if you preserve it. Actually, you have turned it into a kind of Thomasic food. So, you have Sattvic food, you have Sattvic thoughts. Sattvic thoughts are thoughts which always want to understand things. What is the right way of doing things? What is the right way of leading life? It needs a Shastra, it needs intelligence which must justify whatever one is doing. Rajasic man is driven by impulses, but a Sattvic man needs to understand by his intelligence what he is doing, which direction one is going. There must be purpose, there must be direction, there must be a goal. Sattvic society, Sri Aurobindo says, was ancient India. Everything was in order, everything was in harmony, everything was in balance. But again, it had to come down. That is a different reason why it happened. So it was a kind of Sattvic society. Modern societies, there is nothing which is Sattvic. It is striving towards that. Now in India, I see a kind of awakening of Sattvic impulse. There is a need towards that. From Tamas, we went through intense Rajas. Still there is a lot of Rajas, which is good. Otherwise, we'll rush towards sannyas. We are very quick at running away towards sannyas. The only spirituality we understand is somebody wearing a langoti and sleeping on a bed of nails. He is not eating, he is not married, and he is living like a sadhu with a chilam in hand. That's like our understanding of, oh, he is a great yogi. We must understand that all these things are dated. He may be an extremely tamasic man. I have actually met a person who met me in one of the ashramas, and he said, "Hum to chhod ke sab aa gaye." I've left everything and come. So normally you'd say, wow, wonderful. So I said, kya chhod ke aage? They said, no, I was married. I said, oh, I had 6 daughters. फिर जी एक दिन बस मन किया spiritual life, so I've left everything. I said, oh, I understand. So you are living in the ashram and your wife is doing sadhana there. So he didn't really understand what I said. I didn't want to further elaborate. I said, yes, you are living in the ashram and your wife is doing sadhana. So all this kind of, obviously you abandoned 6 children and daughters and your wife thinking that you think you are Buddha. Buddha is moved by a deep impulse. Buddha didn't go to take shelter in an ashram. Buddha went in search, in quest. That was the highest. That was beyond the 3 gunas. So this is just in very short, because it's a whole subject by itself, and Gita lays a great stress on this aspect. So there is the Sankhya School. When we understand it, we understand all about nature and how it's working. It's countless ramifications. This is one school. So there is Sankhya, there is Yoga. So what is Yoga? Yoga has very little to do with exercise. What we are practicing today, actually I have a serious feeling we should stop calling them yoga, morning yoga. Not as Indians. It pains me to see that. They are asanas or stretching exercises. Call them whatever. They are not yoga. Yoga is union with the divine. The word should be preserved only for that. So what about these exercises? Yes, they give you health. Many things give you health. It's perfectly fine, it's valid, it's a good thing to do exercises to give yourself health. But we should not convey to the world that this is yoga. Hatha yoga, from where this word yoga and yogasana comes. Original Hatha yoga, Sri Aurobindo speaks about it in one of his poems. What Ravana did, Dhruv perfected. That is Hatha yoga. I know of only one Hatha yogi, he was in Bangalore. He would do Surya Namaskar for 8 hours a day. You cannot do anything else because it's through the body. He is mathoing the body. Sorry for that English word. He is, so that the consciousness can get liberated and find its way upward. It's not a joke. It's not a half hour or 1 hour I am doing some fitness exercises. And people have turned it even in the West now, now that man is in jail. Hot yoga. So he improvised it. You will do the same asanas, but there will be steam all around. So you'll sweat. Indian, sadly, finally went into. So yoga is union with the divine. So there are various ways of uniting. Why? Because it's the highest possibility. So therefore, each age and each type of humanity, there was a yoga. So humanity which lives purely in the physical consciousness. You try to say that there is a greater truth, there is a reality behind. So after some time the person goes into yoga nidra. But if you say, we'll do 1 hour, 2 hours exercise, yes, that's good. So Hatha yoga is meant specifically for human beings who live largely in the physical consciousness. And since majority of humanity does live in that, so it works very well. But original Hatha yoga included not only asanas but also mudras, bandha, and also kundalini, many of these Hatha yoga. And perfected Hatha yogin was someone who could stay in that particular posture for long time. The body had reached that degree of stability and perfection. Now, if one could do that, fine, but then one cannot do anything else in life. So that's why Hatha yoga as a way of life, yes, asanas are good, healthy, one must do it, no harm about it. So this was Hatha yoga. Then there were people who were more, differently oriented. So for them came pranayama as part of the Raj yogic system. Pranayama is included in both. So in Raj yoga, there are people who start from the mind. So you have the Raj yoga. So Raj yoga, yoga of the king or the king yoga, you don't get into all this. If asanas, pranayama are used, they are only as preliminary things. You see in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So Raj yoga is about start with the mind, start with concentration, start with controlling the senses with the mind. Sanyama, nigraha, and then you take a flight upward. So that's what is Raj yoga, whose primary method is concentration. And Of course, on one side, concentration, on the other hand, renunciation. This was Raj Yoga originally. And you have the centers of concentration and the whole process. But then, what about the heart? Sir, don't tell me all is mind. I love. I also have a will, impulsion to work. What about all these things? Do they have no place in yoga? So Sri Krishna upgraded it all, added something new. He said, Trimarg of the Gita. So your mind is turning toward the eternal, heart is adoring the beloved, and will is serving the master of works. Trimarg of the Gita. So that's for those who have gone still one step further, who are engaging in the world and they want themselves to engage with the divine with every way. With the thought, the mind, the intelligence, the heart, the will. So we see it goes still further. And then, of course, there was the Tantra Yoga. Tantra Yoga said, all of you are Vedantins, you are seeking liberation of the soul from nature. What is nature? What about nature? So Tantra started from there. I will start and play with nature. So it started playing with nature and started discovering that at each level of nature there are countless possibilities. Immense energies. It started entering into that. Playing with it. And they played with nature all the way, reaching up to the highest. End was still liberation. But they did a great work of trying to synthesize. Vedanta, all these are schools from the Vedas. They were moving in one direction. Soul's liberation. Tantrics also understood that. But they said, what about nature? How can you live? What is nature? Nature also contains within it something divine. It has also the same origin. And so in Tantra we had the right hand path and the left hand path. So what was the right hand path? Right hand path said, yes, I understand in nature everything is coming from divine, but certain things are too dangerous, don't dabble with them. So right hand path, through the path of knowledge, it went toward the divine. Whereas the left hand path, he said, no, you are leaving the joy of nature. I must engage with it. So they took up all those activities which were considered as nishedh. Mas, Madira, Meen, Maithun, all everything in which is in nature. It said, even this I am going to use and uplift toward divine. Now, you know what Sri Aurobindo said? Bold, but rash and premature attempt. He didn't condemn it. Bold, but rash and premature attempt, which led to the precipitous downfall. They're not ready. But everything in nature owes something from the divine and can be uplifted to its divine heights. So yesterday what I was saying, and you will see this there in Indian thought, how integral it is. Has anyone gone to Konark temple? Some of us must have gone, no? So what is interesting about Konark? At the center there is sun. The Surya Mandir. And now of course that's not working, that with that ray of light you could know even the hour of the day, yes. And have you seen the engravings all around? Are they all holy engravings? It is, but in a different sense. Yes, you're right. Our traditional idea is, what is all these activities being shown there? A couple who are together, and what is that got to do with spirituality? In the watchful eye of the sun, every aspect of creation, it's a, fullness you will see in that temple. That's one unique temple, because other than that, you see this fullness in the South Indian temples. You see the fullness, even the Asura and the Rakshasas are there. Everybody is there, as if the whole creation is brought under the eye of the Supreme. So it was a very bold attempt. Sri Aurobindo takes all this to its one step further. He says, yes, the body tried through Hatha Yoga, but liberation. The Tantrics tried through nature towards liberation. Trimarga tried through mind, will and heart towards a final liberation through works. Raj Yoga tried through the mind towards liberation. But what about creation? So, what about creation? What about the destiny of the body? Even the Hatha Yogi didn't consider about the destiny of the body. So he brings in this next step. So you see, yoga is also arranged along an evolutionary scale. Those living in physical consciousness, largely Hatha Yoga practices. Those living in largely in the mind, Raj Yoga. Those who are, living more in their kind of soul is awakened to the totality, the Gita. Those who want the final consummation of earth creation, humanity, for them, Sri Aurobindo's Adhyatma Yoga. So, what is this yoga? It's about, he says, liberation is only a first step. But the entire nature must be transformed. So, because he speaks about integral yoga, every aspect, the body, life, heart, mind, soul, all are taken up together. But not that practice a little bit of Hatha Yoga in the morning, do a pranayam in the afternoon, some meditation in the evening, you have integral yoga. This is a great confusion going around. So many people. What is integral yoga? Something for the body, Hatha Yoga for the body, Raj Yogic concentration for the mind, pranayam for the vital, and then you surrender everything to the mother, and that's integral yoga. Sri Aurobindo says if you do this, you will create a confusion. It's not synthesis. Synthesis means he takes the essence of all the yogas. What is the essence of all yogas? Essence is aspiration. Hatha Yogi is aspiring for something to free the body from all its bondages. Raj Yogi is aspiring for something, for that higher consciousness, greater consciousness, for stilling the mind. The Trimarga of the Gita, aspiring to lay oneself completely in the hands of the divine. Become an instrument of the divine, a channel of the divine. Kundalini Yoga, the Tantric, is aspiring for something. What is aspiring? That may this entire field of nature be sublimated and reach the feet of the Divine Mother from whom it has come. So he takes that aspiration. And aspiration now not for this or that, but for the complete divine who is everywhere in creation. That's why, often you will see in Tantra, Sri Aurobindo's yoga has both Vedanta and Tantra. So we have the Vedantic element, the soul must be freed from the clutch of ignorance. Otherwise, it cannot talk about, think about transformation. But there is also the Tantra element, nature must arrive at its fullness. All the possible capacities and upgraded and linked to the divine. That's what is transformation of nature. So he brings in both these elements in a very beautiful way. You have this double combination of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. If you look at Sri Aurobindo, though he is the master of all the forces of nature, but you will see the image of the ancient of rishis. If you look at the mother, she is the divine mother from whom all the energies have emerged. Intense, powerful. So, and she knew what kind of occult. 12 centers, not 7, she speaks about. From the inconscient to the superconscient, all the forces, both of them had mastered completely. She not only knew about the Kundalini from above downwards, all these elements are there in Sri Aurobindo's yoga. The opening of the chakras, the stabilization of the breath, the spontaneous meditation, all these things, service to the divine, the heart's love and adoration going to the divine, mind becoming full of a plenary knowledge through awakening of inspiration, revelation, the transformation of nature at every level in every grade. So he takes it to the penultimate consummation. So when we see the entire yoga systems, of course this is a very brief thing about Sri Aurobindo's yoga, but if we see it in the line of the entire journey of yoga, we see that it stands at the final head of humanity. So sometimes when people put everything together on the same scale, we can do it, but we need to do it with correct understanding. Sri Aurobindo's yoga takes every aspect of creation. So you have aspiration, which is the common element. Rejection, every yoga will have certain things which you have to throw out of nature, otherwise you can't engage in yoga. For instance, in Hatha Yoga, you have to, your diet, it's not just doing these exercises, your diet, your sleep, all this should be regulated. But what you don't regulate in Hatha Yoga is ego. So Sri Aurobindo says many Hatha Yogis develop tremendous ego. You don't work upon it. Then in Raj Yoga, Yam Niyam, you have to, certain prescriptions. It's not like you start doing concentration after learning, paying $1,000. These $1,000 courses are the most dangerous. Why? Because one gets an idea that I have learned a practice technique, I'll practice and I'll be done with it. We cannot fool God. There is a preliminary period of preparation and purification which may stretch up to 12 years, even sometimes longer. And it goes on, because if the nature is not ready, how will it receive the divine? Same with Trimarga of the Gita. It's a constant process which goes on. In the Trimarga of the Gita, you have to reject the Shadripus, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsar. All these jealousies, all this is to be rejected from the nature. And the mother adds to this list Bhaya, fear, the worst impurity. And every yoga will have some aspect or the other of surrender to the self, the higher consciousness, greater consciousness, to the divine, to the avatar, to the guru. So we have the key elements in Sri Aurobindo's yoga: aspiration, rejection, surrender. This is the core of every yoga. If one does the asanas like a drudgery, without any aspiration, the results will be minimal. Even if you take a medicine with all the doubts in your mind, I can tell you have cut down 50% of the effect, which is due to faith. And if you don't have faith in the doctor, 75% is gone. And then it will be self-fulfilling prophecy. So patients come and say, Doctor Saab, दवाई खाते ही मुझे ये इफेक्ट हुआ. I tell them, भैया अभी तो वो पेट तक ही पहुंची होगी. No. It's not the right medicine. It created this. So I say, okay, change the medicine. I know you will have the some problem or the other again. This happened, that happened. And finally they will do doctor shopping. And mother said, guru shopping is as dangerous as doctor shopping. Go to the physician in whom you trust, take the medicine that he gives you with trust. So we do that kind of, doctor shopping, guru shopping. Guru shopping, कितना simplest technique एक बता दो बस. मैकडॉनल्ड्स जल्दी से बता दो. 5 दिन का एक क्रैश कोर्स करवा दो भगवान को पाने में. ज्यादा कुछ इलेबोरेट मत बताओ. ये सब हमको तमस है ना, ये समझना उमझना नहीं है हमको. हम कुछ टेक्निक बता दो. अब वो बेचारे गुरुजी बता रहे, नहीं, अब टेक्निक कब बताओगे? अरे यार टेक्निक नहीं, इंपॉर्टेंट है ये समझो. टेक्निक विल डेवलप फ्रॉम इनसाइड. Technique is the least important thing. It's like when people ask ladies कि I want to learn cooking घर में, तो बताएंगे ये करो वो करो, नमक डाल दो ये डाल दो. अच्छा मम्मी नमक कितना डालते हैं? अरे चुटकी से ले, अंदाज से डाल दे. नहीं आप बताइए कितने मिलीग्राम, कितने चम्मच लेके डालो. अब she has developed consciousness, so she does it. You develop consciousness, you will do it. So अब, and if you start doing like this, it'll be so difficult because every vegetable will need a different. you have to develop consciousness. You can't remember for this sabji I'll put this much for this. You have to learn the basics and the principles. And the rest is your experimentation, your evolution, your journey. And you will end up becoming better than Sanjeev Kapoor. So that's up to you. That is the joy of yoga. It's not a mechanical system. So Sri Aurobindo also gives us these 3 keys. Aspiration for what? For the divine life. Rejection of what? All that stands in the way of the divine unfolding. Not only of Kama, Krodh, Lobh, Moh. That list is formidable enough. But he also says rejection of the tamas body. Are chodo, aaj rehne do. Tamas in the mind. Kaun padhe itna? Sri Aurobindo has written so many books. Who will read? I say read one book at least. Read one passage a day. What is there? एक घड़ी या 2 घड़ी आधो में पुनियाद तुलसी संगति साधु की हरे कोटि अपराध. Doesn't matter. Even those, now for that people have started giving those misquotes of those one-liners moving on WhatsApp. Then people send me कि इसका क्या मतलब है. ऐसे ये कोट ही गलत है. टोटली कुछ भी, मतलब सावित्री में डेथ ने जो बोला है वो भी कोट के रूप में जा रहा है. So anyway, whatever it is, Sri Aurobindo Life Divine में एक आर्ग्यूमेंट रेस कर रहे हैं उसको डिमोलिश करने के लिए, वो भी कोटेशन के रूप में जा रहा है. कंटेक्स्ट नहीं, कुछ नहीं, तो वो तो फिर डेंजरस हैबिट है. सो दिस इज तमस, उसको भी रिजेक्ट करना है. mind, my doubts, my opinions, my beliefs. Someone once told me, sitting over, coffee table discussion, सर वो सब ठीक है, श्योरबिंदो जो कहते हैं वो सब ठीक है, लेकिन अब मैं समझ गया क्या नहीं हुआ, लेकिन इन माई ओपिनियन, मैंने नमस्कार किया, मैंने कहा श्योरबिंदो पे तू मुझे दो बात बता, श्योरबिंदो जो सब कहते हैं तूने सब पढ़ लिया है? तो इतने कॉन्फिडेंटली कह रहा है जो सब कहते हैं, नहीं पढ़ा नहीं है पर ऐसे सुना है। मैंने कहा तो तेरा तो नॉन स्टार्टर हो गया। और मैंने कहा तेरी ओपिनियन, आई वॉज गोइंग टू से तो है कौन, मतलब somebody, I mean, sure, Bindo, just look at just his credentials. I tell people, look at just the credentials, forget everything else. Forget our sentiment and all those things. Look at the credentials. Cambridge में, after doing first class first, he has mastered. In 6 languages, he is regarded as having mastery. Then eventually 32 languages he knows. Just look at just the credentials. In IAS of that time, he stands first class first. And then when he comes in the freedom struggle, he is regarded as the star of the Indian firmament, so much so that the British governments understand. We don't recognize him. We only have somehow fixation, mind fixation to Chachaji and Bapuji. We just don't know. Where for the British government, in the parliament, they are saying, the most dangerous man in India. They are on the minutes on record. The most dangerous man in India. As a teacher, his students would tell him that what a teacher. We were mesmerized. How he would teach? He would not consult the book. He would come and stand and then start speaking extempore. So once he was speaking about life of Nelson, and a student said, "Sir, but this is not how they have described in this book by Housey." Sure, Bindu's reply, "Throw it out of the window." Just imagine to read Greek in original. We only hear about Greek and Roman means I can't understand a thing. To write epigrams in Greek, is written in Greek poetry. Is it? We have not yet finished. Then when he writes through the pages of Arya, I can only speak about his poem, Seer, Deep-Hearted, Divine King of Secrecies, occult fountain of love sprung from the heart of God. Foam billows washing the coasts of heaven, white starred scripts of the gods, drawn from the presses of light. Vast in thy soul was a tide washing the coast of heaven. White starred strips of the gods, born from the presses of light. Thoughts broke, burning and bare, crossing the human night. And in the end he says, page by page, to the dim children of earth were given. Very few people know that Sri Aurobindo literally gave up his eyes, writing in that kerosene lamp. 64 pages of a journal single-handedly typed every month. He is writing on the typewriter just his life. And when he would type, night 10 o'clock till morning 6. Partly responsible for spoiling our children who sleep late at night. Except that Sri Aurobindo was just took rest for a couple of hours, and then he was all again doing what he was doing. Walking 8 hours a day in one room. Once just to see human body, how much by yoga force things can be done. He was literally doing experiment and documenting them in records of yoga. If you read his record, Trikal Drishti, this much perfected, this was missing. So many seconds there was an error. In Trikal Drishti development, Aishwarya development. So once in that process, he took 1 kilogram of opium. Nothing happened. He kept fasting for 42 days, broke the fast immediately. And during that period, he continued all his activities and everything. Didn't announce, I am keeping a fast because you people have done this. It was his experiments with the body Can the body bear the ananda of the divine consciousness? Can it bear the onrush of the truth consciousness? All this meticulously, and then he was giving it to us. How many volumes? From what has been discovered, 36 volumes of such writing, 450 roughly printed pages each, plus minus here and there. Over 300 poems which includes 2 poems in quantitative hexameter. English poets would be shy of trying it. One fellow tried, Matthew Arnold, tried a little bit. Some have tried it. Quantitative hexameter, Ilion and Ahana. What lines? And ultimately Savitri. All this, all the thoughts that you see today, he gave a whole science of consciousness. Now we are turning towards it. Ideas that would change the world, that we talk about it today. Human unity, war, how all this will come about. What is the future of mankind? What really is the past, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita. All this single-handedly. Apart from replying to the disciples, if one day the letter goes unreplied, then, sir, it was Sunday. I thought you would have some time to write, as if Sri Aurobindo is taking holiday on a Sunday. And Sri Aurobindo writes with, after all this, the sense of humor, just to add. If you were to see the correspondence lying on my table and the activities I am engaged in, even the heart, even the rock-like heart of a disciple would melt. Please see. Correspondence is lying, that's running now into 7, 8, I don't know how many volumes. And Sri Aurobindo was not giving that one line reply, do meditation, you will get all the answers. Painstakingly, stupidest questions asked again and again and again and again. Sending help to each and every disciple, working on the cosmic level, all the forces of creation. Uniting with Krishna, having the experience of Parabrahman, Brahman, all this documented so beautifully in his poems. After that, someone says, Sir, Sri Aurobindo ने तो कहा है, but in my opinion मैंने कहा. तो मैंने उसको कहा, हाँ, एक बार ऐसा ही, I did say that, who are you? I gave him another way. I said, it reminds me of a story. एक बार बूंद ने जाके समुद्र से कहा क्या कहा? मैंने कहा इसके आगे पूछने की बात है, समझ जाओ, इशारा काफी है. बूंद ने जाके समुद्र को कहा, मेरा व्यू पॉइंट, मेरा अस्तित्व तेरे से अलग है. वेदांत की फिलॉसफी में दिस इज वन ऑफ द कार्डिनल थिंग. यू कैन प्ले विद क्रिएशन इन एवरी विच वे. द मोमेंट यू थिंक यू आर सेपरेट, दैट इज द डेंजर. Because you can say, I deny the existence of God, but the moment you say, I am separate from this totality, that is where your downfall begins. So we had these 2 schools, and quickly, there's a couple of other schools. So we had Sankhya Yoga. Then we had Nyaya. Let's read that school of justice given to Gautam Rishi, who did Anyaya to his own wife. That was the best way to reform him. And then you know what he writes? 4 ways of pramana. What are the 4 ways? Anuman, Upaman, Pratyaksha, Aptvakya. Anuman. You are inferring something based on the observation. It's part of the Indian thought system, one of the schools of philosophy from the Vedas. Upaman. It is again drawn from certain pratyaksh. You have actually seen it, witnessed it, known it. Pratyaksh is first. Aptvakya. The word used is something else in other writings, but Aptvakya, I love it. So I have just imbibed that. Aptvakya is the word of the realized one. Is a praman. He has seen God. He can show me God. But if I say, he has seen God, I have not seen God, therefore I don't agree. No. Because already yoga is part of that. So there were 4 kinds of pramana. So Vaisheshika came, another school. It says, no, only reason, only observe perception and inference. perception and inference. It's also a school of Veda, Vaisheshika. And it speaks about what is its philosophy. If you know the world existence in all its entirety, you will be liberated. Goal is liberation. Just like today's scientists, if I know all about everything in creation, I will be liberated. Vaisheshika. Then you have Mimamsa. And finally you have the Vedanta. All these are all specialized schools. So in Mimamsa you are using all these analytical processes from different kinds and you are trying to arrive at truth. And you have the Vedanta, which is of course about realizing oneness, the oneness of creation, the one behind everything. I'm not going into detail because again, you will have different schools of Vedanta, Dvaita, Advaita, Visishtadvaita, Dvaita, Advaita, Madhavacharya's school of philosophy, different sub-branches. So roots are the Vedas. If you figure Indian culture as a massive tree, the seeds are those key ideas that have gone into it. And the roots are the Vedas, 4 roots. Rig, the oldest, is about knowledge. We'll touch upon it time to time. Yajur, about works and sacrifice. And Sam, about beautiful hymns of adoration. So it's about the heart. And then the Atharva was added later on. There's another story about Atharveda, but it's a very interesting story. Maybe we'll talk about in the story session. How Atharveda came into existence. So Atharveda is about all the occult understanding of the forces of life. So all this mantropchar of snake bite, somebody was mentioning, all these things comes as part of the Atharva Veda. Then there were certain things which were not directly Veda, but they were considered as, because they are also secret knowledge. Ayurveda. You have discovered the truth, knowledge behind longevity. Then Mahabharata was regarded as the 5th Veda. Same truths but in a different way. But these are the 4 Vedas which are at the root. Then in the trunk you have all these countless, supported by many rishis, Vishnaris who are, brought up different aspects, the various ways intertwined within the Indian way of life. Some people say that Hinduism is a way of life. Well, everything is a way of life. It's the most absurd statement to make. Even doing 5 times namaz is a way of life. Sitting anywhere on the road and blocking the road is a way of life. This is not about way of life. Way of life is a general statement. Everybody has a way of life. It is a way of life based upon certain eternal truths which were discovered by the rishis. Without saying that, just to say it's a way of life is to give half the truth. Therefore, anything that everybody can do, anybody can do, it's a way of life. Then where is dharma? Dharma. We shall touch upon that subsequently. And this great trunk which supports it, that's what it is. It is dharma. The tree of dharma. And with many branches, all these schools of philosophies and sub-philosophies. And with multiple leaves, all of us who have been nourished by this sap and are filling this world. And its finest flowers are, of course, the great ones, luminous ones, the seers, the prophets, the heroes, the martyrs, the great poets. They are like the finest flowers. The wonderful literature that has come. Kalidas, Valmiki, Vyas, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata. All these are part of this huge body. And of course, then there are the fruits. And the fruits, of course, we know are the ultimate products. Those who are very tasty to eat, but also they will give seeds for many others to grow. The great masters who are there, which have come up with that. And not one scripture, Vedas, out of Vedas come Upanishads. Upanishads come out, they are culled out from the Vedas. Then there are Puranas, there is the literature of Tantra, different types of Tantra. Of course, the Gita. And every yogi had its own literature to contribute. Hinduism included everything because it believed, let noble thoughts come to us from every side. And it incorporated in vast body. What was the criteria? As long as it is connecting us to the One, it's okay. We have discovered some new approach. So this is the vast. We are so fortunate, again, that we don't have one book and we don't have one guru, prophet. We are very fortunate that we have options. Otherwise in life you go to a place and he will say, ye hai. The person will say 3-4 things. I'm forgetting the context, but a shopper, actually I had this experience, and I'm sure all of you would have had. अच्छा ये बताना इसके बारे में, इससे सर ये होता है, वो होता है, ये होता है, मे बी सम काइंड ऑफ मोबाइल और समथिंग. अच्छा वो वाला दिखाना है, सर हमारे पास तो केवल सैमसंग है. तो ये उस तरह की बात है कुछ. बट इन हिंदुइज्म you have many options to choose from, which is the most logical thing, because people are different. It celebrates the differences of humanity. And because people are different, they should be having different approaches. So they are allowed different, not allowed. They will naturally have a different approach. There is nothing which is fixed rigidly and made dogmatic and forced upon people. You want to go through bhakti? Wonderful. You want to go through jnana? Wonderful. Of course, the jnani and bhakti will once in a while on coffee table, they will sit and say, no, bhaktas are inferior. Bhaktas will say, you fellows, you are missing something. But after a cup of coffee, they will say, okay, Jai Ram Ji ki. They will not draw the sword and say, you are a bhakta, and not the bhakta, because it's understood that it's okay, there are different approaches. I have taken mine and I think mine is the best. That's okay, that's allowed. Your guru is best for you. Wonderful. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Par Brahma, Tasmai Sri Guruve Namah. That's for each one of us, for each one's guru. But if I say that my guru is for everyone, Brahma, Vishnu, Par Brahm, then we are creating a dangerous trend. My guru, I have to be faithful to him fully. Fidelity to the guru is expected in Indian thought, but to my guru. And knowing that he is a representative of the divine for me. But as far as you are concerned, you have your own guru, you should be faithful to him. And a true Indian will appreciate it, that I am glad that you have that fidelity. And we can close with this wonderful little story about this fidelity. And often people, they think it's a sign of, okay, I don't care, I have too many gurus and no, to your own guru, whatever is the path, you have to be faithful. But you have no right to tell others that you should be faithful to my guru. Why should he be? He has his own journey, his own life. So there was this yogi Krishna Prem. His ashram used to be here in Almoda, Ronald Nixon. And very interesting person. The mathematician who came there, and he followed one lady called Ma Yashoda. And she was, of course, Vaishnava, Krishna Bhakta, and she had her own followers. And he went there, he started doing, cleaning the chula and kitchen. So one of his friends came from UK and saw him. What? Ronald? You think this way you will find God? He says, those who have gone before me have walked this way. Those who have gone before me have walked this way and continue to do the work. So Dilip Kumar Roy had a very interesting conversation, back and forth. Ronald Nixon, Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo's reply, he did this with Bertrand Russell, he did this with Subhash Chandra Bose, he did this with Gandhiji and all these people. He was somehow Albert Einstein. He was a very interesting character, interesting personality. So, exuberant, vital. But deep inside a yogi, Sri Aurobindo says that, I have seen the yogi in you. Your outer personality may have countless defects, but I know there is a yogi inside you. All your experiences indicate that. The problem is not sex, food, etc. The problem is your outer nature which pulls you in that direction, and you get pulled, but eventually the yogi will win. That's how he puts in a letter to him. So, once Krishna Prem came to the ashram and he met the mother. So when he meets the mother, mother said, she was very happy, pleased by him. And she said, ask whatever you want to ask. She's in a state to give any boon. Mother has done this sometimes to some people. Ask any boon. She was ready to give this. And Krishna Prem says, give me bhakti for my guru. And the mother said, but you already have. He said, no, not yet complete. I want more bhakti for my guru. More and more. Surrender, complete. And the mother blessed him, gave a smile, so wonderful. She was so happy, recounted this story to her children and disciples in the ashram, and said, this is the hallmark of a true disciple. Never she tried to say to Krishna Prem, okay, I'll give you, but you have you read Sri Aurobindo's works? Nothing. Ma Anandamayi came along with some of her disciples and had a beautiful exchange in the tennis ground. And she gave some roses to mother. Mother gave some roses to her, and she kept one and gave rest to mother. Mother kept one and gave this rest to her. So this exchange continued. People asked her. She recounted in her own mystic way. When they asked the Divine Mother, what was your impression? She said, she's my daughter, beautiful daughter. She never tried to convert anybody into that belief. And yet, she said, once you have the Master, be completely faithful and surrendered. So how beautifully it is reconciled. See, the human mind plays it. Either or. There is no either or. If you have a path, this is the requirement of the path. Otherwise, you are free to have no path. Perfectly fine. You are free to choose any other path. This freedom of choices is truly called freedom and liberty. And not like the modern liberal thought, which is so aggressively intolerant of anything which does not fit into its own framework. I have had these discussions and I have sometimes told people, why are you then arguing? I can be myself, I can have my own way of life. No. You have to. I said, okay, let's agree to disagree. No. It has to be like this. I said, my God, I never knew that liberal thought is so aggressive and so intolerant. Then of course I saw the TV debates and understood it all. Don't go by names. We stand for liberty, but we invade countries. For upholding the principle of democracy and liberty, undercurrent is oil kitna milega. So let's not, all these games are past. Let's say in all sincerity, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. There is but one truth, but the wise call by different names. Thank you. Namaste. So we'll meet after half an hour at 11:15, and this will be in Hindi.